WK2FM, World Knowledge.
Right, so we have this breaking news and update today, particularly when we saw what Maya posted on his Facebook page. We had this breaking news and update today, particularly when we saw what Maya posted on his Facebook page. That's when we just knew that we can't keep the silence anymore.
Took place was in the Republic of Dominica, and the bigger problem is that of movement of Africans on the continent and outside of the continent. The Europeans and the Americans have their enemies, and they tell some puppet governments around the world that if so-and-so is our enemy, and he must be your enemy also. So you find that countries that are on quarantine on the American and European charts are also on quarantine in most of the Caribbean countries. And the first thing I could say outright is that the governments of the Caribbean, though they are black, they are not friendly towards fellow black people. So language becomes the first barrier. You could just be crossing from one island to another island, and you'd find that the language that they speak there is totally different. I want to acknowledge that the visa system is a big scam which must be scrapped, particularly when African countries and Caribbean countries are still expecting visas from each other. If an African country is expecting a visa from another African country, you must know that the president of that country is still being controlled by someone else who is not himself. Because I was on transit. Last when I got to Dominican Republic, all hell went loose. They just pulled me off the line and started doing all they could do. I bought 4 tickets. I lost more than 100,000 worth of money. To go and buy a ticket, I go and buy it, and I was on the internet. So I was not even allowed to go outside to the travel agents to buy the things. We were doing it online, and my wife was helping me. I bring the ticket. No, the airline does not want it. Then I learned something very important also. That Copper Airlines, which is an American airline, which services the Caribbean, services the American interest. And if the Americans don't want you on their flight, even if the country you're going to, you have a visa for them, if they don't want you on their flight, they will simply object because you're an African. Because there's no way you can tell me that Copper Airlines can refuse me travel when it's written on paper in black and white that I'm a Zimbabwean and I don't need a visa as long as I'm on transit. And I don't even need a visa because I'm exempted as a country. So why would an airline demand a visa from me, yet the country does not need a visa? So is the country the airline, or the country is the country? These are the issues we need to start talking about, that until Africa begins to look at itself, including the Caribbean. And I'm saying Africa now, I'm even including the Caribbean. That the problems of immigration is one way of terrorizing and traumatizing and frustrating the business community on the islands and on mainland, to make sure that the African and the Caribbean will never be caught up in a conversation to talk anything that is progressive.
Greetings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom, shalom. Alafia. Harambe. Abaragani. Freedom land. Positive people. What's happening, y'all? Kamisi Fox. Unify or die. In other words, if we don't unify, bye-bye. You see your people, you don't say hi. You speak another language, you don't even try. You say we're not one, I say that's a lie. I say we at war, the lie don't apply. Get out the box, open your eye, put on your wings, let's fly. Tunaweza, kuzungu mana, waluga yetu. 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 Ha. Unify or die. In other words, if we don't unify, bye-bye. You see your people, you don't say hi. You speak another language, so you don't try. You say we not one, I say that's a lie. I say we at war, the lie don't apply. Get out the box, open your eye, put on your wings, let's fly. Huh. Unify or die. Don't believe the hype, don't believe the lie. Look your people in the eye. Put on your wings, let's fly. Unify or die. Don't believe the hype, don't believe the lie. Look your people in the eye. Put on your wings, let's fly. Come on. Tanaweza, Kuzungu Mana, Kwaluga Yetu. 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 Unify or die. Unify or die. Unify or die. Unify or die. WK2FM. World knowledge to free minds. And you're behind at the same time. World knowledge to free minds and you're behind at the same time. I'm Kamisi Fox. WK2FM is the brainchild of Kamisi Fox and Mixmaster Wayne. Shout out to Mixmaster Wayne. Brooklyn's in the house. North Carolina is in the house. Let's free some minds. Let's commence to freeing some minds. You heard the voice of Joshua Maponga of Zimbabwe. He's a motivational speaker, an entrepreneur, and an esteemed member of Team Black. I would say he's a Pan-Africanist. I got the clip from Pan-African Daily TV featuring Susan Tata. Shout out to Pan-African Daily TV. That's where I heard this story about Joshua Maponga and Wode, who is also, I would say he's a well-known YouTuber and an esteemed member of Team Black. That's the word I use, Team Black. I say that they're esteemed members because they bring us together. They are unifiers. Most of Team Black is involved in separation and division. A good portion of us are. That's the problem. This is why I push the theme, unify or die. Pan-Africanism or perish. Mr. King Joshua Maponga of Zimbabwe pushes self-empowerment, and he's very much a motivational speaker, but he's all about Pan-Africanism and unification. He understands the concept of unification, the one that I refer to as Team Black. Wode is a Ghanaian YouTuber, filmmaker, and travel vlogger. He got his fame documenting his travels across Africa, documenting the African continent, opening it up to the world so that we can see it, showcasing the beauty, the diversity, and the potential for development in Africa, addressing the different social economic issues. And this is so important. He's been such a key figure in promoting African unity, because so many of us just need to see Africa for what it is, not how they portrayed it to be to us. Wode has helped us deactivate our Willie Lynch chip, because, the divide and conquer strategy used by our enemies is used on both sides of the water. Their misinterpretation of African Americans to Africans, and the misinterpretation of Africans to African Americans. We grew up in the 80s, and those of us who were around in the 80s, we saw all of those, commercials showing Africans starving, children, babies, Africans looking like they all just live in straw huts. It was a ridiculous and outrageous depiction of Africa that they gave us. And, some of us to this day still have that nonsense in our head. That's why you hear so much of Team Black having that psychological disease of wanting to be something else, constantly denouncing who they are, saying what they're not. I'm not African. I'm not black. When all of those words you should have no problem with. Because all of those words are actually something good, but you perceive it not. Meanwhile, the people, ironically, your open enemies, the ones who persecute you for being black and being African, they want the vibranium. They're over there calling themselves Afrikaners. They're the ones who won't leave the place. You know what I'm saying? Those are the ones who always talking out of both butt cheeks. And what you're going to realize is what's really going down is that they hate us because they're not us. That's what you have to figure out. Don't wait for the Neanderthal to tell you, because he's not going to. Suffice it to say that these brothers, the elder Joshua Maponga of Zimbabwe and Wode of Ghana are unifiers, which is consistent with the theme unify or die. This is what Team Black is all about. Unify around the world. And the need for us to unify comes home when you look at the situation of these two brothers being somewhat stranded in the Caribbean and going through problems getting back home because of visas, a visa situation. This situation of needing visas and passports to move freely throughout one's own territory. Basically, this just speaks of a need for all of Team Black to be liberated. To make a long story short, that as long as we are colonized, wherever we're colonized by other people, by Europeans, they will be the ones calling the shots on everything, and that includes how we travel. They will interfere with our interaction with one another, as King Joshua was articulating about the interference from these other nations in our affairs, and they affect how we interact with one another. And, you know, one of the ways they do it, one of the ways they keep us separated and divided is to affect our travel so that we can't travel freely, you know, from place to place, so that we won't, be able to meet up with each other and compare notes and come to some conclusions. This is a way of getting in the way of our empowerment. And Team Black, you got to see what I'm saying, and we have to find a way to work it out. As we very well understand that all problems have a solution. And like the scientists that we are, we identify the problem first. Team Black, unify or die. Team Black is the skin team that you were born on. Like Dr. Claude Anderson said, you were born on a skin team. And I use the term Team Black because that is a quick unifier. You might think it's oversimplification. There's a lot of black people members of Team Black, who want to dispute that. Team Black includes all of the people who are classified as black. Now that's worldwide. That's all of the people who are classified as black. I'm not saying all of the people who want to be classified as black, all of the people who actually are classified as black. So what I'm talking is a reality, not wishful thinking. Reality is what we're dealing with first and foremost. Only the truth will set us free, and we have to deal in truth. Again, shout out to Pan African Daily TV for ringing the alarm on this situation. Too many members of Team Black here in America do not tune in and pay attention to the situation with the rest of Team Black across the world. Black Americans are in their comfort zone. Many are in the comfort zone, and, they're in their own zone and think They don't see the relativity of other situations concerning other black people around the world. As the days go by, as the migrant crisis increases, it will not be advisable to us. It would behoove us to stop that disengagement. We will not continue to remain disengaged from the rest of our people. We can do it, but I'll just say it wouldn't be a good idea. Unify or die, Pan-African, or perish. Don't let it be too late by the time you realize that. Deactivate your Willie Lynch chip now so we can be about that business. One of the key unifiers of Team Black is the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who started the Black Star Line to tie us together. That was also dealing with travel, transportation for the Nubian nation so that we can trade and barter amongst each other. If we had followed up on what the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was establishing for us, we would not have this situation today where we are still unable to travel freely without going through things. Brother Joshua Maponga was speaking about how he was held up in the Democratic Republic, the Dominican Republic for like a couple of days. And at the time of this, that I'm broadcasting this right now, I haven't gotten word that they have actually made it back to the continent. I don't know whether they have or haven't. But we have to do better. We have to work together to clean that situation up. I'm talking to those of us who understand and overstand and understand that. Like I said, the average black American seems to feel that their situation is unrelated to Team Black around the world. But for those of us who know better, let us work to iron this situation out. Identifying this travel crisis is something we need to, get busy putting our minds together to come up with a solution to this. It's that simple. In the song Unify or Die, I said, Tunaweza Kuzungu Mana Kwa Lugha Yetu. It is Swahili, for we can speak to each other in our own language. So we have to look at breaking down the language barrier between us.
So language becomes the first barrier. You could just be crossing from one island to another island, and you'd find that the language that they speak there is totally different. Like when I arrived in Republic Dominica, and you find that it's all Spanish thing. So they push me in some custody there for 4 days. No food, no water, no bath, and just making me sleep on a bench for 4 days, literally. And I want to acknowledge that the visa system is a big scam which must be scrapped, particularly when African countries and Caribbean countries are still expecting visas from each other. If an African country is expecting a visa from another African country, you must know that the president of that country is still being controlled by someone else who is not himself. So I used the route away from the Americans and the Europeans to come here, which was through Spain, through Sao Paulo, which is Brazil, and from Brazil into Panama into Kingston. My return was supposed to be on the same route, but the conference finished on Friday, and I was in a hurry to go back home, so the conference felt they could book me a flight from Jamaica, Kingston, into Dominican Republic, and then connect my flight from there, which was going to fly me out into Guarulhos, and from Guarulhos I was going to connect into Sao Paulo. It looked like from the onset there was no problem because I was on transit. Alas, when I got to Dominican Republic, all hell went loose. They just pulled me off the line and started doing all they could do. I bought 4 tickets. I lost more than 100,000 worth of money. To go and buy a ticket, I go and buy it, and I was on the internet, so I was not even allowed to go outside to the travel agents to buy the things. We were doing it online, and my wife was helping me. I bring the ticket. No, the airline does not want it. Then I learned something very important also, that Copa Airlines, which is an American airline, which services the Caribbean, services the American interest. And if the Americans don't want you on their flight, even if the country you're going to, you have a visa for them, if they don't want you on their flight, they will simply object because you're an African. Because there's no way you can tell me that Copa Airlines can refuse me travel when it's written on paper in black and white that I'm a Zimbabwean and I don't need a visa as long as I'm on transit. And I don't even need a visa because I'm exempted as a country. So why would an airline demand a visa from me, yet the country does not need a visa? So is the country the airline, or the country is the country? These are the issues we need to start talking about, that until Africa begins to look at itself, including the Caribbean. And I'm saying Africa now, I'm even including the Caribbean. That the problems of immigration is one way of terrorizing and traumatizing and frustrating the business community on the islands and on mainland, to make sure that the African and the Caribbean will never be caught up in a conversation to talk anything that is progressive. Because that business solely remains to be managed by the Americans and the Europeans, and their anger and hatred for each other is now spilled over to the black people amongst themselves. So I now have applied for a new visa altogether, though I don't need it, to go to Brazil, to go to Panama, then I'll board in Sao Paulo and I come back home. But until that happens, I'm still here in Jamaica. So the problems we see in Africa, in our borders, it is times 10 here. Equally terrible here where we are.
So this is pretty much discrimination on steroids, but with our people. This is how the white people execute racism by remote control. Now, it's one thing for them to do what they do and to be who they are, and you can expect nothing different than that. But it's another thing for us to continue going along with it. My job right now is to x-ray and identify the problem, to bring it to light, as you can see and hear. The problem has been around for a long time, but we can put some extra light on it now because it's happening to two esteemed members of Team Black who are involved in the process of unification, unifying our people, unifying Team Black, which is so necessary for success. So let us take a break from worrying about everyone else's problems and focus more on our own. And don't expect the mass media and the television to tell you what our issues are. Listen to alternative Black media. Pan-African Daily TV is a good place to start. Pan-African Daily TV with Susan Tata. That's a good place to start. Always keep a national and international and world view. And you don't even have to stop there. You can end up with an intergalactic view as well. The Honorable Marcus Garvey's organization was called the Universal Negro Improvement Association. When you say universal, we're talking about the universe. Nyansa Insada, thought without boundaries.
Actually transpired between that time when we spoke to you and then what happened? I mean, you were supposed to board in the next 30 minutes as you told us. So what actually transpired that kept you there for 4 days, sleeping in the airport on the floor with no water, no food, no access? What happened?
They simply said, the answer said the airlines does not want to carry you because you don't have a transit visa. Then what must I do? No, try and get another ticket or buy another ticket to another country. No, that country would need a visa. But I've checked, they don't need a visa. Then the other time, we must take you back to the place where your visa started, which is Jamaica. And unfortunately, when I came back to Jamaica here also, unfortunately, I was kept for another 2 hours in a holding cell. And I had to pay another extra $400 just to get back into Jamaica so that I could begin my arrangement. It's just a frustrating experience, to say the least. It's us as Africans walking through spaces, and Wadamia is just a few meters away from me here. We've been sharing our own stories also as to what happened to him, exactly the same. So there's no way the African leader can sit in his office, yet the spirit of the ancestors who wanted to return home are still crying in the ground, and the leaders are not even doing any effort to make sure that there is direct communication, direct transport, direct exchange between the Caribbean and the mainland. It is totally unacceptable, because as long as that happens, the benefits that Africa can offer remain in quarantine to the Caribbean. The human resource that the Caribbean can offer to Africa remains on quarantine. There's no reason why we should be looking for expatriates from Europe and from America to come and do business in Africa, when our own brothers and sisters here in the Caribbean are equally qualified, trained in Harvard, trained in Miami, trained in Florida, trained in New York, in the best of the countries around, best universities. And they're sitting around here, lying around with no work to do. Whereas we have the resources and we have the business opportunities that are available to them. But again, as I said earlier on, as long as we leave the European and the American community to manage that relationship for us, Africa will never be free.
Here we are, trained, extremely skilled people, unable to put their skill to use. While the World Economic Forum, this conglomeration of madmen, are worried about the population, the number of people on the earth, with the main concentration really being on destruction. Population reduction adds up to destruction. We need to be putting our minds together for production, for productivity. But we have to see the contrast and act accordingly. But we can't do that being distracted by all of the many distractions, celebrity gossip and things like that. The very, very loud, bright circus that is in front of us, that stays in front of us here in America. Asking us to shift our focus and get involved where we're needed. I hope that ain't too much to ask. Because I know us, we like to talk foolish and remain powerless. The agents of division amongst us will constantly be saying things like, y'all got y'all problem over there, we got our problems over here to worry about. Not knowing or acting like we don't know. The understanding of taking on each other's problems. That's how we create the chain and make it stronger. We'll say goofy stuff like that, but as soon as white people call on you, you over there talking about, whenever something going on in places that ain't got nothing to do with you, you start acting like you all are, you done found some cause to be gung-ho about. As long as it ain't got nothing to do with Africa, long as it ain't got nothing to do with Team Black. To the point that crazy Neanderthals like Michael Rappaport think they have some room to get pissed off with black people and think they can talk all crazy and greasy. If you don't decide to take on their problems. Black passivity is a problem. It's a problem that we haven't told that crazy Neanderthal to mind his own damn business and we'll mind ours. We're going to mind our business and you mind your own, Michael Rappaport. Like I said, black passivity and low self-esteem is a problem. And I can trace that problem not just back to slavery, but more recently to the buck-breaking centers known as the public food system, where they get us as babies up in those buck-breaking centers and go about the task of buck-breaking us in the name of education. We don't want to see that it's time to bring that buck-breaking process to a complete stop. And we can speed that process up by taking our Jesus money and using it to build some FDMGs instead of just putting it all on Ifatunde, looking at him and keep saying, why ain't the school started? Where the school at? Where the school at? We can go ahead and jumpstart it and make it happen ourselves. We should want the school to happen. There should be a couple of FDMG academies. If you think he ain't doing the job right, then hey, you go ahead of him and show us how it's done. We would like that. Engage in some healthy competition for a change. I digress, but not really. It's all relative and I'm connecting the dots.
What happens, the benefits that Africa can offer remain in quarantine to the Caribbean. The human resource that the Caribbean can offer to Africa remains on quarantine. There's no reason why we should be looking for expatriates from Europe and from America to come and do business in Africa when our own brothers and sisters here in the Caribbean are equally qualified, trained in Harvard, trained in Miami, trained in Florida, trained in New York, in the best of the countries around, best universities. And they're sitting around here, lying around with no work to do. Whereas we have the resources and we have the business opportunities that are available to them. But again, as I said earlier on, as long as we leave the European and the American community to manage that relationship for us, Africa will never be free and Caribbean will never be free. And as I got here for the last few days, I think the spirit of Marcus Garvey has come to haunt me and occupy me a little bit. That if he spoke about repatriation, if he spoke about returning of the exiles back home, there's no better time to do it than to resurrect the bones of Marcus Garvey and say, ships brought us here. We can now begin to organize for ourselves as Africans in the Caribbean. It's not everybody. Those who want to go back home, it must be made easy for them to do so. As a result, the African governments need to start a debate and a discussion. How do you accept your own children that were taken away from you as slaves? How do you take away your own children and take them back in your own home? Your child disappears from the house for 4, 5, 6 years. When he comes back, you tell me that your child needs a visa into his own mother's house. It must be made easy for them to do so. As a result, the African governments need to start a debate and a discussion. How do you accept your own children that were taken away from you as slaves? How do you take away your own children and take them back in your own home? Your child disappears from the house for 4, 5, 6 years. When he comes back, you tell me that your child needs a visa into his own mother's house. Your son needs a visa to come back in their own mother's house. This is the kind of conversation we want the Africa Union to start having before they can talk about strategy 2030, 2063, and all those goody, funny, useless things they talk about. The first thing we do, we put our house in order. How do we put our house in order? We consolidate the African nation as one. The entire Caribbean must become the 55th country on the Africa Union. Point number one. They must be under one power state, with one currency in their hands, with one passport in their hands. And from that angle, they can approach Africa also, which needs the same idea. So the combination of the Caribbean and Africa will form the Africa that we want.
So while the members of Team Black are running around getting passports, running around to women of other nations hoping to be accepted, trying to start a patriarch in another man's land, or really just becoming a part, at best, the most you can wish for is to become a part of the patriarch of somebody else's patriarch in another man's land, I got a better idea. Why don't we start trying to work on some of these things that King Joshua Maponga is talking about? That would be much more fruitful and rewarding for you if you only knew. And that's part of our problem. We're about the business of seeking acceptance. That's one of the key symptoms of the self-hatred that we have. This low self-esteem that we have, one of the key symptoms is our seeking acceptance. We sick with that.
Just imagine the amount of tourism we can unlock. All these Caribbeans who want to go there, all those Africans who want to come here. And what made me mad also is when these people, these Spaniora people look at you and they're a black man and they think that you're poor and you're begging, like I've run away from home, like I don't have money to look after myself. I am here because I'm going to be running away into their town and doing some illegal. I almost hired a lawyer there for $2,000 just to sue the hell out of them. So I'm not begging for anybody. I'm not begging for nothing. And I'm here not to lambast the horrible attitude of the Republic Dominican immigration officers. Their segregative and racialistic attitude. The way in which they don't look at people and undermine people. If anyone wants to come to the Caribbean, the last place you want to go to is the Republic of Domingo.
And these are the places these passport bros are running to, looking for some loose women so that they can say they is submitting to us. And this is also where a lot of black men, members of Team Black, are getting taken out also. So just keep that in mind while you're running around hating your women, while you hating these beautiful African queens. I said it, and I know that gets under a lot of your skin, because we ain't supposed to talk like that, right? I'm simping. We holding on to a whole lot of degenerate niggerisms that we need to let go of. I'm going to just say it like that.
Dominican Republic. It's a horrible place simply because of the immigration and the stuff that you meet when you're entering into the place. If you are black, just be prepared to suffer racism on steroids, just like we did in South Africa. And unfortunately, this time, it's from black people.
From self-hating, self-loathing black people. There's enough self-hatred to go around. This whole process of being miseducated by our open enemies is taking its toll. By the way, support the Zayx Institute with Q Butter. Support the Zayx Institute. Q Butter and the staff at the Zayx is doing an awesome job. Support Dr. Mayat and the school she has going on. The most valuable people amongst us are those who are working with the children and accelerating their excellence. That's where we need to be putting our money at. Not in the church, constantly paying God money that he never asked for, or money that the goddess never asked for. But on the real side, you're just paying for Reverend so-and-so's cars and the homes that he lives in. That's that big pimping, you know what I'm saying? That's why pimping and the church look the same. Just saying. Listen to what Brother King Joshua Maponga is saying. Team Black, we got work to do.
The mulattoes, which is a combination of Spanish and these mulattoes, and they think they are better than blacks because they're slightly lighter than blacks and they are closer to the white people than we, the darker ones, are to the white people. So they make their money from becoming good boys to the boss and the bosses, whom we don't know where the hell those bosses are. But that's the reality. We need to deal with it. I'm not here to report badly on any country. I'm just here to report exactly what happened to me.
And we know what the deal is because we see the same stuff here. You see the same stuff worldwide being practiced amongst Team Black. The colorism is happening worldwide. And Team Black is just like this, using the team concept, because that's the thing that motivates us the best. Because at the end of the day, we really don't want to be on the losing team. Have you ever seen a football team that got all-star players? You see a team owner like Jerry Jones who recruits all-star players. I'm going to recruit the top players, and you got a team with the top players, all pro players and all of that stuff, but can't seem to win a championship or a Super Bowl. That's kind of what's going on with Team Black. We got all-star players. We got all-star abilities, but we can't seem to put it together. The lack of unity is the missing element, because it doesn't matter if you got star players. You can have a team with less talent that ain't got as many stars, but have the self-determination and the willpower and the willingness to work together to get the job done. And you often find that a less talented team keeps getting the job done. Now, take that analogy and apply it to Team Black and what's going on in the world, how everybody seems to be outperforming us. Yet we have the most ability. I'm going to stand on that. If you listen to your open enemy close enough, he confesses to that all the time. It's just when it's Team Black going to get the memo.
And to be civilized. That's the word, and to be civilized. And today was the limit that I said this would not happen, because you will never see on any media. If you were being murdered out there, you and Brother Wode Maya, nobody would even say anything. Even the postings and the interaction, like we are just on our own, like nobody can even help anybody. I mean, it's insane. It's so insane. And I can understand that.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that the Africa Union was meeting a few days ago in Addis Ababa? Like a few days ago.
Yes.
Benson Rutendo was in. So what were you talking about? What are you talking about for the past 60 years as Africa Union? What are you talking about? When the real issues that are on the ground are still remaining unattended to.
And the very question he's asking the African Union, on this side, we can ask the same question of the Congressional Black Caucasians. I mean, the Congressional Black Caucus. I mean, the Congressional Black Caucus. What have they been doing? What are they talking about while the real issues remain unaddressed? You see how it's worldwide with Team Black. The fronting and the faking, the political fake-outs, the political sellouts. It's worldwide. One thing I happen to notice, that Burkina Faso is getting it done because they have a young leader in Captain Ibrahim. And this goes back to something that the Black Authority has always said. You know, Africa needs to overhaul these leaders with some youth. It's a lot of these old niggas that's selling us out. And I don't care who don't like it. That's a fact. And it's really, it ain't far-fetched. It's really how nature leads. When people get older, they get more pliant. This is why we need youthful leadership. When you see Captain Abraham, you see a young man who's not going to be fooled, who's not going to be tricked. So keep your eye on those who are organizing the youth. There's a group of black men, African men, who are organizing the youth across Africa that was on Pan-African Daily TV some time back. I can't think of their name right now as I sit here talking, but I'm going to revisit this anyway. There's really not enough time for me to even cover this subject and even this situation. I'm just pretty much doing following up from what Pan-African Daily TV is bringing out, and I'm doing my part to bring it out and to ring the alarm. But like I said, the most valuable people amongst us are those who are working with the youth. I mean, at the end of the day, you can we can argue all day about ideologies. Like I said, there's a lot of things we ain't going to agree on. We are professionals at not agreeing on things and not finding a commonality. One of the commonalities are reparations. We all need that bag. I mean, to just break it down to the real nitty gritty. I mean, to skip the sophisticated political talk. And we all need to, like I said, we need to place value on the seeds that's coming behind us and not so much value on us, the present generation, because we got the disease. We're going to do a whole lot of fronting. We were miseducated and poisoned by the public food system. We need to invest in the future. We need to be honest with ourselves and make a full investment in the future. Support ZIX, the ZIX Institute. Matter of fact, I'm going to make sure I put the information in the description box of this video when I finally complete it. Because due to lack of time, I have got to step off. Y'all, I'm losing time and losing money. Once again, I need that bag to keep doing this. I need that bag. I need some help. I ain't too proud to beg. That is my own people. Let us stop taking one another for granted. We don't know how long this internet is going to be up. Make maximum use of it. Dr. Susan Tata goes into that further in this discourse that she's having right now. But like I said, I got to step off. I don't have time to get all the way into it like I want to. I'm going to just revisit it. You see what the deal is. You see Joshua Maponga and Wode stranded out there in the Carribean, unable to get back home due to some visa nonsense amongst our own people. White supremacy by remote control. Let's get to work on that. Unify or die. Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. It's Kamisi Fox for WK2 FM. World knowledge, two free minds in your behind at the same time. There it is.
WK2